When the judge read the verdict, the entire city was in shock. But before I tell you about that day that changed everything, I need to tell you about the night my own family burned down everything I'd built with my bare hands. My name is Madison, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can become your greatest enemies. It was 3:47 a.m. when my phone started buzzing with alerts from my security system. At first, I thought it was another false alarm. Maybe a cat had wandered too close to the motion sensors again. But when I opened the app and saw the orange glow filling my cafe's windows, I knew my life was about to change forever. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. To understand why my own brother and mother would destroy everything I'd worked for, you need to know how we got here. You need to know about the 28 years of being the forgotten daughter in a family that only had room for one golden child. Growing up as Madison Parker was like being an extra in someone else's movie. My older brother Derek was the star, the athlete, the charmer, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I was just the girl who studied too hard, asked too many questions, and apparently didn't know her place in the family hierarchy. I still remember my 12th birthday like it was yesterday. I'd been dropping hints about this beautiful purple bike I'd seen at the local shop for weeks. I'd even circled it in the newspaper ad and left it on Dad's desk. When Derek walked into our backyard party pushing that exact same bike, I felt my heart stop. Not because I was getting the gift I'd dreamed of, but because I watched him hand it to Derek instead. "Early birthday present, son," Dad said, beaming as Derek climbed onto my bike. "Thought you could use some new wheels for high school next year." My gift, a used copy of Charlotte's Web that I'd already read 3 times. Mom patted my head and said, "Books last longer than bikes, sweetie. You'll understand when you're older." But I understood perfectly, even at 12. I understood that in the Parker family, Derek's wants came before my needs. Derek's achievements mattered more than mine. Derek's future was the family priority, and I was just the backup plan. This pattern followed me through high school, where my straight A's were overshadowed by Derek's touchdown passes. It continued through college, where my parents missed my graduation ceremony because Derek had a crucial baseball game the same weekend. They'd flown halfway across the country to watch him strike out 3 times, while I walked across that stage to collect my engineering degree with an empty seat where my family should have been. The day I called home to tell them about my promotion to senior software engineer at tech company, I was practically vibrating with excitement. Finally, something they couldn't ignore. Finally, an achievement big enough to matter. "Mum, you'll never guess what happened," I said, the moment she picked up the phone. "Oh, honey, I'm so glad you called. Derek just lost his job at the insurance company, and he's really struggling. You're doing so well with all that computer stuff. Do you think your company might have something for him?" I stood there in my new corner office, looking out at the city skyline, holding a phone that suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "Mom, I just got promoted. I'm now the youngest senior engineer in the company's history." "That's nice, dear. So about Derek." That was the moment I stopped expecting my family to see me, really see me. That was the moment I started building a life where I didn't need their approval to know my worth. 3 years later, everything changed when Dad had his heart attack. I was the one who got the call at 2 a.m. I was the one who drove through the night to reach the hospital. I was the one who held his hand as the machines beeped around us, while Derek was too overwhelmed to leave his apartment. In his final lucid moments, Dad squeezed my hand and whispered, "The house, Madison, it's yours. You're the one who never gave up on family, even when we gave up on you." The will was crystal clear. The family home, a beautiful Victorian that had been in our family for 3 generations, was left entirely to me. The note Dad included with the will said simply, "To Madison, who always stood on her own 2 feet. May this house be the foundation for the life you truly deserve." Mom was furious, Derek was incredulous, but the law was the law. And probate court doesn't care about hurt feelings or family dynamics. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of selling the house or letting it sit empty, I decided to renovate it into something beautiful, something mine. I poured my entire savings account, nearly $200,000, into transforming that old Victorian into Madison's Corner Cafe. For 8 months, I worked every weekend, tearing down walls, refinishing hardwood floors, and painting every surface. I learned to tile, to plumb, to wire electrical outlets. My hands were permanently stained with paint and calloused from construction work, but every blister was worth it. This wasn't just a cafe I was building. It was proof that I could create something beautiful and valuable without Derek's charm or my parents' approval. The day I opened Madison's Corner Cafe was one of the proudest moments of my life. The morning rush brought dozens of neighbours who'd watched me transform the old house. Mrs. Chen from next door brought me orchids. The mailman, Tony, became my first regular customer. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. That's when my family decided they wanted back in. It started with casual comments. Mom would drive by and make observations about how successful the cafe was becoming. Derek would stop in for free coffee and casually mention how much money I must be making. The conversations always seemed to circle back to the same theme. Wasn't it unfair that Derek had nothing when I had so much? "You know, honey," Mum said one Tuesday afternoon, stirring her latte with deliberate slowness, "I've been thinking about Dad's will. He never really intended for Derek to be left with nothing. He just assumed you two would share everything like a real family should." I looked up from the espresso machine, steam still hissing around us. "Mom, Dad's will was very specific. He left the house to me because he knew I'd do something meaningful with it. But Derek is struggling so much. He can't find steady work, and his apartment is tiny. Meanwhile, you have this big, beautiful place and a successful business. It just doesn't seem fair." The word fair hung in the air like smoke. I'd heard it my entire childhood, usually when Derek wanted something I had, or when my achievements made his failures look worse by comparison. "Mum, Derek is 30 years old. Maybe it's time he figured out his own path instead of waiting for handouts." Her face hardened in a way I recognized from childhood. The look she got when I pushed back against the family narrative, when I refused to play my assigned role as Derek's supporting actress. "Madison Parker, you are being incredibly selfish. Derek is your brother, your only brother. Family takes care of family. Where was this family loyalty when I was growing up?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Where was it when you missed my graduation? Where was it when Derek borrowed my college fund for his spring break trip? Where was it when I called crying about my first breakup and you told me you were too busy helping Derek move apartments? Mom's coffee cup clinked against the saucer as she set it down sharply. That's different, and you know it. You never needed us the way Derek does. You were always so independent, so cold. Cold. The word hit me like a physical blow. Cold because I'd learned to survive without their warmth. Independent because dependence had only led to disappointment. But the pressure didn't stop with Mom's guilt trips. Derek started showing up at the cafe during busy periods, loud and disruptive, making comments about how I'd stolen his inheritance. He'd tell customers stories about how the cafe should have been half his according to family fairness. The breaking point came 3 months later, during what Mum called an emergency family meeting, which really meant a coordinated intervention designed to make me cave to their demands. I walked into Mom's living room to find Derek sprawled across Dad's old recliner like he owned it, and Mom sitting rigid on the couch with a manila folder in her lap. The coffee table was covered with printed emails, legal documents I didn't recognise, and what looked like a crude financial breakdown scrawled on notebook paper. "Madison, sit down," Mum said, patting the couch cushion beside her. "We need to discuss this situation." "What situation?" I asked, though I already knew. Derek leaned forward, his face flushed with the kind of righteous anger that only comes from months of building resentment. "The situation where my little sister thinks she's better than her family. The situation where you got everything and I got nothing, just because Dad played favourites. Derek, Dad left me the house because he was a bitter old man who never understood that I was going through a rough patch." Derek slammed his fist on the arm of the recliner. "You think you deserved that house more than me? You think you deserved to build a business with family money while I'm living in a studio apartment eating ramen noodles?" Mom opened the manila folder and pulled out what looked like a contract. "We've been doing some research, honey. Consulting with people who understand family law. And we think there might be grounds to contest the will." My blood went cold. "Contest Dad's will? Mum, he was completely sound when he wrote it. He had lawyers. It went through probate court. But there are provisions for family members who were unfairly excluded," she continued, her voice taking on the tone of someone who'd rehearsed this conversation. "Derek has rights as a son, as an heir." I looked back and forth between them, seeing clearly for the first time how this had all been orchestrated. The casual visits, the comments about fairness, the sudden interest in my success, it had all been leading to this moment. "So, what exactly are you asking me to do?" Derek's smile was sharp and cold. "We're asking you to do the right thing. Sign over half the cafe to me, half the property, half the business, half the profits. Make this family whole again." "And if I don't?" The silence that followed was deafening. Mum and Derek exchanged a look that made my stomach clench. "Well," Mum said slowly, "then I guess we'll have to explore other options, legal options. Family court can be very, unpredictable." I stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me. "Let me get this straight. You want me to give Derek half of something I built with my own money, my own labour, my own vision, just because he's related to me? Because he's your brother," Mom snapped. because family means something, because you can't just pretend you don't have obligations to the people who raised you. The people who raised me? I laughed, but there was no humour in it. You mean the people who forgot I existed unless Derek needed something? The people who made it clear every single day of my childhood that I was the consolation prize? Derek stood up too, towering over me the way he had when we were kids. And he wanted to intimidate me into giving up a toy or a treat. You know what your problem is, Madison? You're bitter. You're so focused on ancient history that you can't see what's right in front of you. I'm your family. I'm struggling. And you have the power to help me, but you're too selfish to do it. I'm selfish? The words came out strangled. I'm selfish because I won't hand over half of everything I've worked for to someone who's never shown me an ounce of genuine care or respect. You're selfish because you're hoarding Dad's legacy like some kind of dragon. Derek's voice rose to a shout. That cafés represent our family, not just your ego. Mum stood and placed herself between us, but her next words felt like a knife to my chest. Madison, if you can't learn to be a real sister, then don't expect to have a real family. Some things matter more than money, and if you can't see that, then maybe you're not the daughter I thought I raised. I looked at these two people, the only family I had left in the world, and saw strangers, worse than strangers. I saw people who viewed me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited, a problem to be solved, an obstacle standing between Derek and what he felt entitled to have. Get out, I whispered. Madison, Mom started. Get out of my cafe. Get out of my life. And don't come back unless you're ready to treat me like a human being instead of Derek's personal ATM machine. I walked out of that house knowing I'd just burned a bridge I could never rebuild. But as I drove back to my cafe, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years when it came to my family, relief. I had no idea that in 3 weeks they'd burn everything down. The silence that followed our confrontation was deafening, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm, heavy with electricity and unspoken threats. For 3 weeks after I threw them out of my cafe, I heard nothing from Mom or Derek. No angry phone calls, no guilt-trip text messages, no surprise visits, just nothing. I should have known they were planning something. During those 3 weeks, I threw myself into my work with an intensity that surprised even me. Maybe it was my way of proving to myself that I didn't need them. Maybe it was my way of drowning out the voice in my head that kept whispering all the cruel things Mom had said. Or maybe, deep down, I knew something terrible was coming, and I wanted to fortify everything I'd built before the hurricane hit. The cafe was thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. The morning rush brought regulars who knew my name and asked about my weekend plans. Mrs. Chen had started bringing her book club on Thursday afternoons, and they'd claimed the corner table as their permanent spot. Tony, the mailman, had convinced half his route to stop by for my signature lavender honey lattes. I'd even hired my first employee, a college student named Sarah, who was majoring in business and reminded me of myself at that age, determined, overlooked, hungry to prove herself. But success couldn't shake the feeling that I was living on borrowed time. It was Sarah who first suggested I contact a lawyer. Madison, she said one Tuesday afternoon as we were closing up, I keep thinking about what you told me about your family, about them threatening legal action. Don't you think you should get some professional advice, just in case? I was wiping down the espresso machine, the same mindless task I did every evening, but her words made my hands still. I mean, your dad's will was legally binding, right? They can't actually contest it after all this time. Can they? The truth was I didn't know. I'd been so focused on building my new life that I hadn't bothered to research what weapons my family might have in their arsenal. That night, I lay awake Googling terms like will contest, family property disputes, and inheritance challenges, until my eyes burned from staring at my phone screen. What I found wasn't reassuring. While Dad's will had been properly executed and probated, there were indeed circumstances under which family members could challenge bequests, especially if they could prove undue influence, mental incapacity, or unfair exclusion. The legal fees alone could drain my savings, even if I ultimately won. The next morning, I called Jennifer Johnson, Esquire. I'd found Johnson and Associates through an online search for family law attorneys. But what made me choose Jennifer specifically was a quote on her website. Sometimes the family that's supposed to protect you becomes the family you need protection from. When I called her office, her assistant scheduled me for that same afternoon. Jennifer Johnson's office was nothing like the intimidating law firms you see in movies. It was warm and comfortable, with soft lighting and family photos on every surface. Jennifer herself was a woman in her early 50s, with kind eyes and the kind of no-nonsense demeanour that immediately put me at ease. "Tell me everything," she said, after I'd introduced myself and explained why I was there. "And I mean everything. Don't leave out details because you think they're embarrassing or irrelevant. Family law is messier than any other kind of law because families are messier than any other kind of relationship." So I told her everything about growing up as the forgotten daughter, about Dad's deathbed decision to leave me the house, about the café I'd built with my own money and labour, about the confrontation with Mom and Derek and their demands for half of everything I'd created. Jennifer listened without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. "Madison, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Your family doesn't have a strong legal case for contesting your father's will. The bequest was clear, properly witnessed, and executed by someone who was demonstrably competent. The fact that you improved the property with your own funds actually strengthens your position." Relief flooded through me like cool water. "So they can't take the café?" "Legally, no, but..." Jennifer's expression grew more serious. "Legal and practical are two different things. Frivolous lawsuits happen all the time, and even when you're completely in the right, defending yourself is expensive and emotionally draining. Your family could tie you up in court for years if they wanted to cause you pain." She opened a file cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. "I'm going to prepare some documentation for you. Copies of all your father's will documents, proof of your property improvements, business licenses, tax records. Everything that establishes your legitimate ownership. I want you to keep copies in multiple locations, here, at home, and somewhere off-site, like a safety deposit box." "Is all that really necessary?" Jennifer's smile was sad. "Madison, in 30 years of family law, I've learned that when money and emotion collide, People do things you never thought they were capable of. Your family has already shown they're willing to threaten legal action to get what they want. The question is, how far are they willing to go? I left Jennifer's office with a thick manila envelope full of legal documents and a cold certainty that I was going to need every single one of them. But I also left with something else, validation. For the first time in months, someone with authority and expertise had looked at my situation and confirmed what I'd known in my heart all along. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was a woman protecting something she'd rightfully earned. That feeling of validation lasted exactly 11 days. It was a Thursday night in late October. I'd stayed late at the café to experiment with some seasonal drink recipes. I was working on a maple cinnamon latte that I thought might become a fall signature. Sarah had gone home hours earlier, and the building was quiet except for the gentle hum of the refrigeration units and the distant sound of traffic on the main street. I was just finishing up when I decided to review the security footage from earlier in the day. I'd installed a comprehensive camera system 6 months earlier, not because I didn't trust my neighbourhood, but because small businesses are vulnerable and I'd learned to be cautious about everything I couldn't afford to lose. That's when I saw them. Derek's beat-up Honda Civic had driven past the cafe 3 times between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m, slowing down each time as if he was studying the building. On the 3rd pass, the car had parked across the street for nearly 20 minutes before driving away. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more footage. There, Monday afternoon, Mum's silver sedan parked at the corner, the driver's seat occupied for over an hour. Tuesday evening, Derek again, this time on foot, walking the perimeter of the building like he was looking for something specific. They were casing my café. My family was surveilling my business like criminals planning a heist. I called Jennifer immediately, not caring that it was nearly 11 p.m. Jennifer, it's Madison Parker. I think my family is planning something. I have security footage of them watching the cafe and I'm scared. Slow down. Jennifer's voice was calm and professional even at this late hour. Tell me exactly what you saw. I described the footage in detail, sending screenshots to her email as we spoke. Madison, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Make copies of all that footage immediately. Upload it to a cloud service. Email copies to yourself and to me. Document everything with timestamps. And then I want you to consider filing for a restraining order. A restraining order against my own family? Against people who are engaging in stalking behaviour around your place of business. Madison, blood relation doesn't give someone the right to intimidate you or threaten your livelihood. If they're planning something, we need to get ahead of it. But we were already too late. At 3:47 a.m, my phone started screaming with security alerts. I bolted upright, in bed, instantly, wide awake with the kind of adrenaline spike that comes from deep, primal fear. The notification banner read, "Motion detected, main entrance." Followed immediately by "motion detected, kitchen area," and then, most terrifyingly, "smoke detected, multiple zones." I was already throwing on clothes when my phone rang. The caller ID showed the local fire department. "Ms. Parker, this is Captain Rodriguez with Station 19. We're responding to an alarm at your business address. You need to get down here immediately, but do not attempt to enter the building." The drive to the cafe was the longest 10 minutes of my life. I could see the orange glow against the night sky from 6 blocks away. could smell the acrid smoke that meant everything I'd built was being devoured by flames that shouldn't exist. When I arrived, 3 fire trucks were already on scene, their red and blue lights painting the neighbourhood in an apocalyptic strobe. Neighbours had come out of their houses to watch, standing in small clusters on the sidewalk in their pyjamas and bathrobes. Mrs. Chen was crying, clutching her husband's arm as they watched my life's work burn. Captain Rodriguez found me standing on the sidewalk, paralysed by the sight of smoke pouring from every window of my beautiful café. "Miss Parker, I'm sorry, we got here as fast as we could, but the fire had too much of a head start. The building is going to be a total loss." "How did this happen?" I whispered, unable to take my eyes off the flames. "I just left a few hours ago. Everything was fine. All the equipment was turned off. All the electrical was inspected last month." "That's what we need to investigate. This doesn't look like an accidental fire, Ma'am. The burn pattern suggests accelerant was used, and there are signs of forced entry at the back door." Accelerant, forced entry. The words hit me like physical blows, each one confirming what my heart already knew, but my mind didn't want to accept. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to think about anyone who might have had motivation to do this. Anyone with a grudge against you or your business. Anyone who knew the building's layout well enough to..." "It was my family." The words came out before I could stop them, hanging in the air between us like smoke. Captain Rodriguez's expression shifted from professional sympathy to sharp attention. "Your family?" I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers, scrolling to the security footage I'd saved just hours earlier. "My brother Derek and my mother, they've been surveilling the building for weeks. We had a fight about money, about the cafe, and they threatened me. I have proof." As I showed him the footage, I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest where my heart used to be. This wasn't just arson. This was the complete destruction of everything I'd built to escape them, performed by the people who were supposed to love me most. The fire burned for 3 more hours. By dawn, all that remained of Madison's corner cafe was a blackened shell, and the acrid smell of dreams turned to ash. But as I stood there, watching the firefighters douse the last stubborn flames, I made a decision that would change the rest of my life. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jennifer Johnson's number. "Jennifer, it's Madison. They burned it down. Derek and Mom burned down my cafe, and I have it all on security footage. I want to press charges. I want to take them to court for everything they've done to me." "Oh, honey," Jennifer's voice was soft with sympathy, but there was something else there too, something that sounded like determination. "I am so sorry this happened to you, but Madison, we're going to make them pay for this. We're going to make them pay for all of it." As the sun rose over the ruins of my cafe, I realized that the scared little girl who'd spent her whole life trying to earn her family's love was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who taught you exactly how strong you could be. Derek and Mom thought they were destroying my future. What they'd actually done was free me from my past. And now they were going to learn the difference between Madison, the forgotten daughter, and Madison, the woman who refused to be forgotten ever again. The security footage was damning. Crystal clear, 4K resolution, showing Derek jimmying the back door lock at 2:15, While Mom waited in the car with the engine running, Derek disappearing inside for 12 minutes before emerging with what looked like an empty gasoline canister. The timestamp on Mum's lighter flicking to life. Derek walking calmly back to the car as the first flames began to lick at the kitchen windows. But what the cameras captured next was even more devastating than the arson itself. As they drove away, Derek rolled down his window and shouted something at the burning building. I had to enhance the audio 3 times before I could make out his words clearly. If I can't have it, then nobody can. That's what you get for being a selfish bitch. And Mum's response, captured by the sensitive microphone I'd installed to monitor for break-ins. She brought this on herself. Maybe now she'll learn what family really means. They thought they were destroying my life. Instead, they'd handed me the evidence I needed to destroy theirs.